Cool. Right, well, thanks everyone for joining. Today we're joined by James and Jani, who has grown exponentially over the past year on YouTube with very, very few videos, going very much against the grain of Ali's advice of one video a week for 2 years. But he's made it work, and we're delighted to have him here today, just to have a conversation. The way this will work is I'll ask James some questions for sort of half an hour, and then we'll open up to questions from the floor from the audience. So if you have a question, do raise your hand in about half an hour's time, or just drop it in the chat and I'll feed it to James. Otherwise, yeah, let's get going. So James, for anyone who doesn't know you, do you want to just give yourself a little introduction?
Yeah, of course. So my name is James Jani. I run a YouTube channel with literally the same name. And I started YouTube about start of 2020. I think it was the first video was uploaded like January 27th. And just before then, I was working as an estate agent. Actually, even after like the first few videos, I was working as an estate agent here in the UK. Left that job as soon as I left it. Lockdown hit. I was literally living with my parents at the time, and I had like a full excuse to just go all in on the channel. I think by the end of that year, I managed to like close in on 500,000 subs with about, I think it was, can't even remember how many videos I'd uploaded. I think it was about 6 videos potentially, and then kind of continuing, not 6 video, sorry, 10 or 11. It was something like that. It was a crazy number. And definitely, we'll probably end up talking about this. It wasn't like I was going in expecting that, like not at all. But yeah, that was a wild year. And then continuing on now in 2021, like it's basically been a case of I guess the issues that you kind of, or problems that you face, right, shift. So at the start, it's about learning, getting the confidence to upload. Now it's kind of become about expanding the team and bringing people on board and really turning it into a business and building towards like the bigger long-term vision that I'm going for. Yeah.
So what were your expectations then when you started it?
Literally, kid you not, I had it on like a whiteboard as well right at the start of the year because I knew I was going to start a channel, and I literally wrote like get 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. And that for me would have been like, yeah, that would have been a successful year. And like, mate, I didn't even think I'd get 1,000 subscribers. Like, let me make that clear, because it's really easy as well. And I know it because I get all the time questions, and like friends of mine get these questions from me. They say like, oh, like how did James do it? What was the secret? What was that? Because like people want to mimic like that same crazy amount of results in a short period of time.
Yeah.
And it isn't the right way to go into it at all. Like I think the best way of going into it is seeing it as which is what Ali says as well, which is very true. Is like see it as the 2 to 3 year kind of game. It's not something that inside of a year you can expect to do like what I've done. Like I didn't expect to do what I've done. Most people shouldn't go in expecting the same thing either. I mean, that being said, we'll talk about what it is, like the things that I think aided in allowing me to get to this position. But yeah.
So what made you think that selling houses wasn't the way to go and making videos was? Like what actually inspired you to start YouTube?
Yeah, good question, man. Initially, it was from a position of not really, like, I was in this spot where I just lost my passion for acting at the time. And for me, that was quite a big deal. I've always been someone who was on the more creative side of things. I never really like looked at like making money or entrepreneurship or anything like that until sort of around the time I was losing my passion. I went on like a holiday with some friends, basically went broke, and was like, oh crap, I need to make money. Started getting more into entrepreneurship and business, fell into like a rabbit hole of the like quote unquote fake gurus. Then from there kind of developed my ideas, fleshed out kind of good advice from bad advice, started going down different ventures. So before I was working as a estate agent, I was briefly working at like as a cashier M&S here in the UK here, and doing like it was like a customer survey type of job where you have to cold call people and like ask them survey stuff, and then went on to a estate agent job. But the goal was, look, I'll get a job and that money will kind of fund any kind of venture or anything that I'm going to be doing on the side. At the time, there was a few things. One, I had like this marketing agency I was doing with a friend that didn't work. The second thing was this thing called Quidemy, which was going to be like this online platform to learn about like financial literacy. And it was inspired kind of like, it was meant to be like the financial version of Code Academy. If you've ever heard of Code Academy, they kind of like Skillshare and whatnot, just focused on like learning about coding. And then from there, I was doing the estate agent job. And I mean, starting a YouTube channel was a mix of a bunch of different things. Like, number one, I saw like there was a lot of power that can come from building a personal brand. Like looking at other YouTubers, I was heavily inspired by Graham Stephan, for example. At the time, I never knew how much money people could make from YouTube. And it's not that it was about money, but it was like Graham Stephan making his videos, his finance videos, and then actually revealing the numbers that he made was like a thing. Like, oh, like you can actually build like a thing from this. It's not like people were just struggling out here. I mean, I thought that was the top YouTubers making tons of money, and then most people were kind of just getting along. Graham Stephan revealing his numbers gave me an idea. It kind of set the light bulb there that this could be something I could pursue. And then really, I initially started the channel as a way of indirectly promoting Quidemy, which was the finance platform. That was like the initial thing. But even now, in hindsight, I kind of realized that I wanted to go down YouTube because it was me trying to almost move myself back into the creative part of me that has always been there since, like, you know, as a kid. Like I do even love like stories, like reading fiction, like writing stuff, and acting obviously was the big thing for me around that time when I was losing my passion for it. So I think it in many ways was me trying to mix in entrepreneurship with creativity, and the part of me that I had been kind of fleshing out for the most part, like since I was a kid.
So what made you sort of take that different path of really highly edited documentary style videos? And on that point as well, on the editing point, like, could you edit before you started this? How did you learn how to do that?
Very good question. So yeah, I didn't know how to edit. I only like the extent to my editing knowledge was literally I had like a gaming channel back when I was like 14 years old, with like like 10 videos of like really crappy edits on Sony Vegas. Never touched it since then. So coming into the channel was like all fresh, like Premiere Pro, never used it in my life. And I'd never been like, I'd forgotten everything that I'd ever learned from editing, like as scarce as that information was. The reason that I suddenly changed or had this idea of doing this highly produced stuff, or this like documentary style of videos was really after my second video. I think it was not after the second video. So I would really consider it like my channel really began on the second video. The first video was me trying to do something, because if I didn't do a video, I wouldn't start. Like I knew it, like, and most people have it. It's like you're scared to start a video because you're scared about what other people are going to say, etc., etc. So that first video was just that. And then the moment I did the second video, which was the Rise of Figures, that was for me the moment I realized that this YouTube thing mixes in that creativity with the entrepreneurship and business side. And from that, I thought, let's look at the niche that I'm in, which is the kind of finance business niche. Was essentially was around that sort of, I knew that was kind of the same audience that I myself had been involved in. I kind of know what they're like and how they think and whatnot. I looked at that niche, and if you go and search around and you look at Graham Stephan, or you look at like Meet Kevin or Andre Jick or whoever it might be, the videos are very informal. And this isn't like obviously hate to any of them. Like it's very very information focused, a lot of talking head stuff. The aspects of storytelling, or combining these crazy edits, or really like forming. I mean, storytelling is what it is at its core. Whether it's like to do with editing or how the video is structured, all of this stuff just at its core is about storytelling. That was never there in that niche. The only person I'd seen doing a similar thing at the time was Jake Tran, who was another YouTuber who was doing this thing where he would combine like movie clips together, with some music, and that was where the storytelling element would come in. And I saw it was like a proof of concept for me that was like, oh damn, like there's a way of bringing this into this niche. And I knew from my past background of like acting, and just being overall a much more creative person, that this could potentially be a gap, and I guess almost like a problem inside of this niche on YouTube that I could go in and try and solve and fill that gap. So yeah, from the second video onwards, it was like a quest to sort of learn as much as I can about editing, as I continued making these videos, and just trying to, I mean, I don't know how much you want me to get into the tactics and whatnot here, because I know your question was just on me like learning editing, but
no, but I mean, in terms of the storytelling tactic, all of those things would be relevant. I mean, we did a lot of storytelling last week. So I mean, how do you make sure your videos, because the length of your videos for something on YouTube is on the it's on the lengthy side, but you manage to keep people's attention for that long? and it is kind of that Netflix style documentary esque content. So how do you think about your storytelling, and is it a case that you think of it from start to end? Are there stories within each video, that kind of thing?
Yeah, damn, this is a really good question. And my answer is it's honestly, it's a tough one, because if I'm like gonna be completely honest, I've never had like formal or theoretical training on storytelling. It's only something I've started looking into recently. Everything that I've applied into what I've done has just come either like innately or from some aspects of my acting. So like in a lot of the videos, especially the earlier ones, I'll do a lot of trying to build stakes or asking questions, or or essentially a lot of my videos have this idea of like finding the truth of something, and that's like interesting. That the aspect of finding the truth is where the story was always built from that idea. um and so I've never, now I understand elements of storytelling and how to find the beats and building out stakes more and understanding pacing, or at least I'm learning more about that. But at the start, it was just about how can I make this interesting, how can I add some stakes. I mean, even something small like adding music to a video, or even just listening to music as you're thinking about the video or structuring or like writing the script for it, does a lot to help you with understanding the atmosphere and the sort of story that you want to tell. So yeah, I don't know if that's like a bit of an underwhelming answer, because it's really tough, because I never had like a background in specifically storytelling. It was always acting, and anything that I did do that was storytelling centered was based on innate stuff that I kind of was doing off the cuff. And not that that was excellent, there's a lot of flaws in it that I'm trying to improve now, but yeah, that was kind of where I was at the time.
So you mentioned it, like you sort of saw that gap of storytelling in the finance niche, but where do you think about how you generate your ideas and things like that? Because idea generation is something we talked about a couple of weeks ago on the course. How do you go about generating ideas, and then how do you go about sort of combining certain ideas into maybe one video, given the length of the videos that you do?
Yeah, really good question. So obviously, and I'm sure you guys have already been told to do this, but keeping just a notebook or somewhere where you constantly store ideas is great, even if they're complete like garbage. Just having ideas that constantly come out. A great thing with the channel is if it's inside of a niche or a audience base or demographic that you yourself are familiar with, you understand what your audience are interested in, what your audience like have been going through in their experiences. And if you don't know this, then it's great to do like a consideration of actually who is your audience or your target demographic. Like who is this for? Like what do they watch? What kind of, what newsletters are they reading? What kind of websites are they on? This typical kind of like research on who your target audience is. Me knowing my audience helps with understanding, okay, like we've got an audience which is a mix of people who are trying to first sort of sort between bad information and good information. So the rise of fake gurus in many ways was a mix of understanding that my audience has probably been exposed to some of these people, but also my experience with them as well, because I knew I had like my own. It was almost like it came a little bit from my own experience and that and my anger, but also understanding that my audience had like a connection with this and probably would have experienced the same thing. Join them together, and CoffeeZilla at the time, who was starting to create videos around this subject as well, was my springboard to understanding that, oh, hey, like this is something that people do want to talk about as well. So that's that idea. The Toxic World of Self-Help, for example, was another one built from my own personal experience, but knowing that everyone inside of my niche and my audience and the I guess like if the right word is your tribe, like people that are like you, like I knew that they would have read a lot of self-help books. They would have been in similar positions that I've been in. Great. So that's a personal story brought into this video, but packaged up like almost like a broader topic, right? Because in reality, if you took that video down, it's just my story about my experiences with self-help. Is really what it is, but packaged up as like the toxic world of self-help. It's much more emotive, it's stronger, it kind of is more general versus my experience with self-help. Like that's just it's less interesting like that. Maybe that trends more into the topic of titles, but
Yeah, so just on carrying on the idea thing, well, moving more into kind of the video process, because obviously you publish videos very sort of infrequently, but they're obviously very good, and so you managed to build up this massive audience. So can you just talk us through your video process, like idea to research to editing to production? Because I know also you mentioned that you've recently outsourced the editing. So can you just talk us right through from the start to hitting publish?
Yeah. Like it's obviously always a work in progress, and it's a process that keeps evolving and adapting. It looks nothing now than what it did at the start, and it won't look the same in about a year's time. But at the moment, it will be a case where I've got an idea that I've found, again, related to what we just said earlier, an idea that I think is somewhat related to what I know my audience is interested in at the moment, and also something that I myself am curious about finding the truth in and discovering more about. So let's take the Bitcoin video, for example. We've got this subject of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, which I know has been a big thing. From there, we go into, okay, the research. And typically, I'm not like someone who came from too much of a heavy like academic background, but typically how my research is conducted is by evaluating, okay, what are the questions is normally a really helpful way of conducting your research. So what kind of questions do I have about this subject? Okay, like what is Bitcoin? What is blockchain? Why does this thing have value? Why is it valued so high? Why is it so volatile? You kind of boil down these questions out and you get them all down on a paper. Sometimes it's good to evaluate which of these questions are most interesting. So a lot of the times it's like, why is it valued at like such a high, and I think the second part of that series was mostly about this question, understanding the value of it and also the dangers of it, which is a bit more exciting. So once you've got those questions out, I will spend, a little bit of time for each question, just going and gathering some resources for it. I mean, there's a whole range of places that you can go to, including like YouTube. Obviously, if it's something like Bitcoin, and this is very much like a factual based thing, so you want to make sure that you're getting the right information, you'll have to go to maybe better sources. I took an edX or EDX. I don't know how you pronounce that, how you say that website, but it's the website where they have like courses from universities on there. I took one on blockchain, which kind of a lot of the topics in there were answering the questions that I had set out initially when I was writing them down. So yeah, finding those resources under each question and then just diving into it and don't spend too long on this as well, I think is an important thing that I've had to teach myself. So like you should really only spend 10 to 15 minutes searching for resources for each question. Like it should be a really quick thing. And if like it's taking you can't find anything in 10 to 15 minutes, like get rid of that question, as long as it's possible. So yeah, gather the resources, start watching that content, find the sort of bits of information that you need, like write those notes down. And very important, which is something that I've started to do now, is script as you do this research. The worst thing is like that I used to do is like you do all this research and then you're like, great, time to start scripting this, and then like you've like lost all of the information that you've just spent like hours and hours researching. You have to like go through your notes, and you're doing this weird process of trying to script a little, but then like going and seeing your notes. It's kind of awful. It's not nice at all, and it takes a lot of time. Instead, script as you're researching and kind of give yourself permission to create a really like crappy first draft. Like it's okay to have like a really crappy script. Like a little secret for me is that most of my scripts I'm always afterwards saying like, god damn it, like this could be so much better. But it's a case of getting over that, and you learn through as you continue making scripts. They will get better and better each time. So yeah, you begin scripting as you research, and slowly what you should do in this process and what you should be able to see is a structure to the narrative and the story that you're trying to tell. So in the case of let's take the second part of the Bitcoin, or let's take the first part of the Bitcoin series, right? You begin first with a kind of hook, something that you want your audience to be, that will capture their attention right from the bat. Normally this is about, including elements of mystery, and again, almost using the questions that you had at the start of the process, using those questions in that like hook and that prologue. So in my first part of the Bitcoin series, we get this intro to what the price of Bitcoin is at the moment, and like how it was like 19 cents like only 10 years ago, and like what the hell is going on. And you get a sense of all the kind of divide and the divisiveness between the conversation around it. And immediately the audience is landed with a mystery and a sense of questions about this subject, which is, what the hell was going on with this Bitcoin thing, right? Like that's the big question. And hopefully if you've done a good job in understanding your audience, you understand that's something they're already interested in. Once you got the hook, then let's launch into it. So how does this narrative make sense? We've just hooked our audience in with this idea of what the hell is Bitcoin? Well, let's start with that. What is Bitcoin? Go into the explanation of what that's like. And now that we've gone through that side of the journey, okay, what's kind of the history and what's the background? Like, how did this thing come to be? And so then we go into the sort of story of Bitcoin's origins and the like mysterious creator of it and the purpose behind like why they created it. Let me just quickly, I've got a timer that's just going off in my headphones. 1 second. Where is it? It's so loud. It's literally a Google timer. Hold on. Okay, there we go. We're back. Cool. Yeah, so you're going through okay, now you're going through the history and the origins, and then you eventually like watch Bitcoin. I thought was a great concept is like you kind of watch Bitcoin's price rise and all the events that was kind of leading to its price rising at the time. And then I ended it with the sort of to be continued. Second part of the series was about the problems of Bitcoin. In that video, there was a character which was actually Bitcoin, and you kind of go through Bitcoin's problems and the issues that it faces, and then towards the end, you kind of get the resolution of the story, which is we start to look at potential fixes to the problems of Bitcoin and whatnot. Yeah, so that's understanding the narrative and scripting, and then the final bits, of course, is editing. Obviously, I can't explain everything that I do inside of editing, but to boil it down really simply, I will normally storyboard my script. So in a Google Doc on the left side, have the script written out. On the right side, have like editing notes that you want. It could literally be as simple as for a blockchain animation, be like animation, have a blockchain form as a grid, and then have a new one form and somehow symbolize them being linked together. So you can kind of give it broad strokes, and then you can more begin to concept that as you go into the actual editing and deciding on how you want to animate it, that you can almost draw it up on a piece of paper and begin to execute on what you've got in your mind. I use After Effects for my motion graphic stuff. Premiere Pro is for making cuts and edits and kind of putting the pieces of the puzzle together. Yeah, so is that kind of covering? I mean, after editing, you're done
so,
with the video.
No, yeah, my only kind of one addition to that would be that we can perhaps come back to, but you mentioned that you kind of outsourced your editing recently. Is that something that you've always wanted to do, or is that something that Ali's told you to do?
No, it's something that I've wanted to do. So I obviously have like a bigger kind of vision for where I see the channel going and where everything is going to be. And an important part of that vision is obviously like I want it to grow into more of like I guess the right word is like a media sort of, I like cringe at the name, like a media empire, but more in the sense that like we're able to. Did Angus just disappear? I don't even. Angus?
Sorry, I'm back.
I was like, you just left me. Yeah, so I wanted to expand it into a media empire, but essentially it's this key question that, and even like you guys may have to ask yourself at some point is, do you want to lean towards the side of like building a business, or do you want to lean towards the side of just being the creator at the center? And both are okay. It just depends on who you are and what your vision is. I know that my vision is quite a big thing that is going to require my time not be like 100%. On editing, because a lot of my time is spent in there, and so it was a very difficult thing, but it's me having to kind of let go of that process and trust in someone else. One of the things that was made me confident in the fact that I could find someone and that it's okay to do that is the fact that, mate, I didn't know how to edit until I started the channel, and I've only spent like a year and a half doing editing. If that's me a year and a half, like there's people out there who have spent like years and years like honing this craft. There's someone out there who is there's plenty of people who are going to be better than me. So yeah, that was recently a new thing for 2021, which is expanding and building more towards that bigger vision that I'm going towards. And so a part of that has been finding an editor, which was a whole other process that I don't know if you want to get into that, but yeah, it was good. We finally got an editor. And I guess, do you want me to go into how I work with the editor, or?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind. Yeah, and also just sort of what you're, just quickly, and then we'll go back to the. I want to talk to you about titles and thumbnails as well. But yeah, the editing side of things would be, I think, useful for people to understand.
Yeah. So the way I work with my editor at the moment, and bear in mind it's only been about a month now, and they've technically done half of my most recent video. Now the next one they're working on themselves, and it's still a back and forth process of him getting understanding of what my style is and what I'm going for. But obviously a big important thing here is during the application and when you're finding someone is to make sure, and luckily I had like editing experience. I was able to look out for key things that I'd be able to understand are, okay, like this person is probably not what I'm going for. This person understands and has like the key skills that I'm going to need. It just may need a bit of adjusting, which was the case with my editor. What happens is I have the storyboard, which I was always kind of using already, and I had that structure out. So on the left-hand side on the Google Doc, you'd have the script. On the right-hand side, it will be sectioned out little bits of like the editing notes of what happens on each point. Sometimes it's super broad generalizations, like I mentioned with the blockchain stuff, where it will just say, you know, have a blockchain grid form, and then have another block be created and linked to the previous one. The important thing here is that giving your editor trust is like super, super important. And obviously it makes sure that during the application phase, you know, they have the skills to execute on something that is along the lines of what you are going for, and the sort of style, what they have the skills to create what you expect. So when you give them a broad generalization of, you know, having the block link back to the previous one, etc., they're creative enough, they are an editor, so that you can let them kind of do that and create it. And having the back and forth thing where they'll send, like my editor will send me over that edit and say, hey, is this what you're going for? And I can say, okay, no, have this like a little bit changed up here, a little bit changed up here, and they'll get it. Sometimes, and this is what I haven't done and what I should do and what I encourage people to do, and it's easier in the case of like Ali and other YouTubers who have a clear theme and a style guide for a lot of their videos. So with Ali, you already know what the editing is going to be like he's got that theme where it's very like clean and crisp, and you've got like the sort of icons that he commonly uses, and the style is very understandable, where you can literally create a style guide of this and like hand it over to any editor with at least some understanding of motion graphics and whatnot, and they'll be able to mimic it at least to a very good degree. And so I recommend having even something along those lines. Is something that I'm working on developing recently now, is having more of a style guide with my videos. But yeah,
so where did you find your editor?
Yeah, good question. So it was me and my assistant kind of basically like just shotgun approach everywhere. We kind of went on my community page. Obviously the benefit of having like the audience that I do is I can just shoot an application over to my audience and see, you know, who might be inside of my audience that is a talented editor. We went to Facebook groups and basically just blasted out a bunch of like applications to those Facebook groups, which are specifically for editors. We went to, there was, I don't think it's called Mandy anymore. I think they changed the name. It was a website where you used to be able to find actors, or actors could go to find jobs. That was it. Yeah. Mandy.com. And yeah, it was where actors would normally go to find jobs, and people would post jobs. And now it's also expanded into film crew. So we went and posted an editing thing there. Total, we had about 190 applications. We boiled it down to like 17. From the 17, we boiled it down to 7, interviewed the 7. Of the 7, there were 3 that we gave, I think it was 3 or 4, I think, that we gave a paid task to. And the paid task was literally just a video, kind of again in the sort of similar style that I normally do, but it was a video about the vision of where I think everything, where I want everything to go, which I thought was a great task to kind of first warm the person up to what we're going for, and also for them to get to know the business better. So paid tasks come through, and out of those 3, we obviously found our one, and from there on, was onto the main channel projects. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so as I mentioned a minute ago, let's go back a bit to the video production process, specifically like titles and thumbnails. How do you think about your titles and thumbnails? Because your thumbnails are always, you know, absolutely incredible. And you know, titles and thumbnails are something that we've talked a lot about on the course. So how do you think about it? Is there a specific process that you go through for each one? Do you have to list hundreds of titles before you settle on the right one? What's your process for it?
Yeah. Oof, this is a rabbit hole of a subject. So with titles, or even with thumbnails, that it's important to understand that I guess your whole goal is to get somebody to click on a video and to earn enough of a curiosity from the thumbnail, from the title, for them to click. And typically the order in which someone will click on a video, and you can almost reverse that. I highly encourage anyone, like when you're starting a YouTube channel, you have to almost switch up the way you use YouTube as well. So, you know, in many cases, we use YouTube to consume content. And so you kind of do things blindly. You're scrolling, like you're on the toilet, like just scrolling through YouTube videos, and you just click on whatever comes up. Now you've kind of got to shift it up to where you're scrolling through YouTube, and anytime something catches your eye, understand why it's done that. But typically when you're scrolling, the first thing is the thumbnail. And from the thumbnail, you'll read the title, And then it's those two things combined together that will cause you to click. And there has to be something enough in the thumbnail for you to want to read the title, for you to want to click on the video. Sometimes it's good enough, for example, if you're a fan of Ali, seeing his face is enough for you to just go, oh, it's a new Ali video, click. Sometimes it's a case where they're not familiar with your content. And really what you have to look at, there's a few ways of this, right? So understanding your audience is one thing. So I knew that the rise of fake guru video, the keywords being like the fake guru and having like Ty Lopez, Dan Lok, etc., right, were the kind of the key people that I threw in the thumbnail. I knew that my audience would know who these individuals were. And I knew that kind of including the sort of fake words in there, these strong words that almost stir up this kind of reaction, would create enough of a curiosity for someone to want to click on the video. The same thing kind of goes with a lot of like the videos and the titles and thumbnails that I do are based on the understanding of who my audience is, then understanding how do I trigger some kind of emotion in them or something that makes them go, oh, like this is interesting, or this is something that I can, it's curiosity, right? It's like getting on that element of mystery and curiosity, and what is it that's going to make someone go, okay, damn, like I need to click, I need to find out what this is. I think a really useful way of looking at this when you kind of look at your titles and thumbnails is to look at it and say, if I saw this as I was kind of scrolling on YouTube, is this something, and you have to really like drag yourself out of this. Like it's not like you have to put yourself out of this and completely look at it from the perspective of someone who's just a casual viewer on YouTube. Is this a video that I can almost scroll past without going, damn, I really want to know what's inside of that video? And that could be a really good litmus test for what you're doing and whether the title and thumbnail works together. There's a lot of, it's tough with this because there's a lot of caveats and sometimes it works different for other niches. I mean, you look at the channel like Meet Kevin, who is literally every single thumbnail is just the same thing. It's his face. There's no text. There's nothing, because it's a very different channel, a very different niche. For my niche, it's about, you know, finding out some kind of stirring up some emotion through the title, some kind of controversy, if possible. It doesn't always have to be like crazy controversial, but at least stirring up some kind of curiosity from your viewer. Yeah.
Do you design them all yourself as well?
Yeah, all of it has been designed by me. Like I use Photoshop to design my thumbnails. I use Netflix as well as a great, like a little technique that you can do is just going onto Netflix and browsing some of the thumbnails that they have on there. Netflix, if I remember correctly, they have their own algorithm that they use to test thumbnails based on like the viewers that they get. And so it's almost like they've done some legwork for you and finding thumbnails that work. So going onto Netflix and almost like having a second to sort of like have your eyes closed, have like thumbnails up, open them and see where your eyes like gravitate towards immediately, or even searching on Netflix for videos that are inside of your niche and seeing what kind of thumbnails they do, because they're very specific with, for example, if like it's, you know, if they're going for the sort of like money related topics, or even if it's documentaries, they have like, they know what sort of thumbnails and they've tested them to know which ones work. That's why you see like, someone mentioned it in the chat, like they change it up, they switch it up because they want to test which ones work best. So yes, on that note, actually, just kind of just circle back, when you're coming up with titles, brainstorm a ton of titles, like as much as you can. Like I'm talking 40 to 100 ideas. At least this is what I do. Like you don't put it this way. You can create an amazing video, but if a title in the thumbnail isn't good and doesn't generate that curiosity, all of that effort that you kind of put in is not wasted because you get experience from it, but it's just, it isn't allowing your video to hit its full potential. I'm trying to think of a really good example of this. I think from my channel, like the Untold Truth About Money, which is like my most popular video, was a way of, I could have named this, you know, something like the truth about entrepreneurship, or the truth about wealth, or something of this nature, right? Or let's take the truth of entrepreneurship, because I remember it was a similar name that was very boring at the start, but it took a little bit of like understanding, how can I package this video differently? Because when you boil down the Untold Truth About Money, all that video was about was like understanding, okay, hey, like what is realistically a way in which people have built wealth in a short amount of time, and typically that's through like a business and scaling the business off and liquidating it at some point, right? That's all the video is if you boil it down to its core. But packaged in the thumbnail and title is the untold truth about money, keywords untold truth. Something where it's like, wait, what untold truth? Like, what haven't I heard about money, right? Like, what is that thing? And just through brainstorming a bunch of these title ideas, you will find something that just sticks more, that makes you far more curious. I encourage you to go and ask other people for their opinions on it. Be careful with asking, like, for example, like your parents or family members. Try to ask people that are inside of like your space of you. Like, for example, I'm pretty sure on like Part-Time YouTuber Academy, you guys have like a sort of forum or community based thing. Asking people inside of people who are more geared towards like the YouTube side of things is far better, because they will understand titles and thumbnails that work much more. Versus like a random friend or again, like someone that is not even involved inside of your niche, right? Like I can show the Rise of Fake Gurus to a friend of mine, which I admittedly did at the start. And it's like, like, I don't know who the hell Ty Lopez is and whatnot. But if you showed that to someone that was inside of my niche that cared about the same thing as cared, they're like instant, like, yeah, that's a banger. Like that, like stick with that. Yeah. Does that, another note on the thumbnails, just as a final thing. It's good to create variations, at least like 2 variations of a thumbnail that you have, because obviously on YouTube you get to switch out thumbnails. So you don't have to stick with the one that you've come up with. And sometimes you might upload a thumbnail and you'll see that, hey, on like your click-through rate, which again, it depends on your views, but typically anything from like 15% to 20% up is great. I mean, it's tough because this really differs on your scale. But if you notice that click-through rate is lower than what you're usually expecting, switching out a thumbnail or having another variation to use could kind of really save you from being in that position where you're like, oh god, well, the video's ruined now, so I have to like move on to the next thing. Yeah, hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, no, cool. I've just got one more question on the kind of process side of things before you broaden it out. Just to kind of personal one, really, because I noticed might not have been the last video, it might have been the one before, you released like a 30-second trailer for it almost a day or so before. Obviously you need a big audience to be able to do that effectively, but did that actually work? Or
I used to I mean, it's not going to be to like the extent to which the channel is now. It's not really going to have, I'm not going to be able to, I don't measure the impact that does either way, but yeah, I don't imagine it would add anything more than like already a core audience that would have watched the video anyway. I think the trailers and stuff is much more to do with, I guess, how I brand myself in the channel, where it's like, you get some excitement out of the video. It almost should feel like a movie or something where you can sit down with some popcorn and tuck into, and I guess the trailer enforces that kind of hype and excitement about it. So yeah, it's not something I particularly measure. It's much more of like a branding decision or something to help my core audience to get them excited about a video, versus something that is actually like going to do a huge boost to the video.
Yeah, cool. We've had a few people mentioning in the chat your Patreon page, which is good. I think you've got a few extra signups, which is good.
Nice.
What made you? Someone has also commented about how generous you are with your Patreon stuff that you offer. Like, what made you choose Patreon, and why do you give away so much through that channel?
Good question. Patreon is great. So ad revenue wise is how I make most of the money from the channel. It's from ad revenue, which has been great because I'm in the finance niche, and that's a well-paid niche on YouTube. But I know for a fact that I'm starting to move away from the finance niche very slightly, bit by bit. And I also know that, well, like very common, like you don't want to rely on just one source of income, and especially when the whole business is kind of relying this, and now I've got people that I've got to pay as well, right? And so understanding, and this is maybe a huge tip for anyone that's starting YouTube, if your problem isn't that you just are scared to start and you actually do want to start and you don't have an issue there, understanding or having some sort of thing on the back end that you can use to monetize the channel is great, because a lot of niches aren't going to be as well paid as, for example, the finance niche has been able to carry me through alone throughout this period. Sometimes you're going to need something like a Patreon, like a subscription, or like merchandise, or whatever it is that's fitted to your niche. Maybe it's like a course, right, around whatever it might be, like a skill that you are good at. Like, for example, if I had, even though I wasn't great, let's say I was great at editing right from the start of the channel, like I would have maybe worked on some kind of editing class on Skillshare or an editing course or something of that nature, so that I wouldn't have to rely solely on ad revenue. But the Patreon was essentially a way of me finding somewhere in which I can move that income away from just relying on Google ad revenue. Patreon is nice and easy in its setup. They run the whole thing for you. It's, you know, you're not paying for a service. Patreon is hosting it all for you. All you need to do is create a page and create the tiers. In terms of, there is obviously a commitment depending on what you're offering on your Patreon. So I offer some video editing tutorials. I do like a lot of behind the scenes stuff as well, in terms of I have like a series called Board Meeting where I kind of talk about the business behind the scenes and sort of the struggles and the successes and the vision and all of this kind of stuff. And I have a few other things. So I post sometimes the scripts on there. I do Q&As, but honestly, it's for me, I find it really helpful. At the same time, when I do this Patreon stuff, like it's not, I don't really see it as a case of me being like, oh crap, like now I've got to do the Patreon video, because the Patreon is also a way in which I can practice a lot of things, which is like it's quite funny. I say this sometimes on the board meeting series, where I literally just like experiment with camera angles and lighting in some of these like board meeting stuff, because it's a nice place where I don't have to, it's sort of your time to communicate with your really core audience that really love what you're doing and want to financially support your channel. But on this note, I do plan on actually doing like a rebrand of my Patreon to make it a bigger and better thing than it currently is, because at the moment it feels very much like a classic Patreon where it's just like there's a couple interesting things on there and go on it if you want to. Now I've been considering like turning it into a much more bigger source of income for the channel, because now as I move more and more away from finance, like I expect ad revenue to drop. So yeah, on that note, I lost my train of thought there.
Right. I mean, you certainly got John's just put in the chat that it's far above anything else that anyone's ever offered. So if you think it's average, I think you are exceeding expectations.
Thank you, John.
Anyway.
Brilliant. That's my plant he's been putting the audience. Yeah, that's great. And it's really nice to hear that, because sometimes I worry that maybe I don't give as much, but yeah, Patreon is a great place. It's a subscription thing as well. It's like it's a monthly recurring thing where your audience can stay on there for and generally as well. Another thing with Patreon is you notice an upward trend. So I don't think there's ever been a month on Patreon where it's like dropped in like how much I earned. It's usually just gone up and up and up and up. There may be limitations. So if you're not posting content on your like main channel, you will potentially see like stagnations on the Patreon. So obviously like your main channel is like the core base in which everything else is kind of funneled out of. But yeah, that's another really, really useful thing with Patreon that you would notice.
Cool. I just got a couple more questions before we open it up to the floor. The first one was actually in the chat, but I'm interested to know it as well. Like, have you ever had any sort of negative response from your videos, especially the ones around like the fake gurus? Have you ever had to deal with any of that?
Oh, of course. Yeah. You get it. I mean, look, the part of the game, especially if you go for like controversial stuff, or especially with like the Law of Attraction series, which is like a big one. I remember like people, you know, that for some people that's like the equivalent of like a religious belief, and it's like when you're questioning it, you can expect the criticism. But that's the name of the game. If you're gonna make a video on that content, then expect a lot of like a lot of people to kind of be, you know, commenting things or like opposing your opinion and whatnot. You definitely kind of get used to that. Again, it's literally part of YouTube. Even if you're making there's no way, I don't think there's nobody that exists or nobody that could do anything that someone isn't going to attack you for or go like be against, right? It's always going to be like you're never going to have everyone on your side on something. But I guess in my context specifically, what I do, yeah, of course, there's funnily enough, the fake guru video didn't have as much crazy. I actually had surprisingly, I've had like weird situations where one of the gurus I've mentioned in the video like donated to my Patreon, like super weird stuff like that. Or I've spoken to one on the phone where they were like really nice. It like nothing bad came from the fake guru video. The only
probably good publicity for them in a way.
Yeah, that's what I think it was, to be honest. You know what I ended up doing? I literally just ended up closing out their pledge and like donating the money that they sent me to charity, because I was just like, if I think their marketing is unethical, which I do, and they're paying me, it's kind of like getting money from the people that they're like getting money from unethically. So I ended up just like basically canceling out their pledge. But that's a whole other story.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but yeah, criticism is to be expected no matter what you're doing. I know sometimes things can get, oh god, this is maybe a whole other story about being on the internet and whatnot. Sometimes things can get more serious than just like an angry comment. It's like someone mentioned like CoffeeZilla. being attacked. So there was some stuff with CoffeeZilla, particularly because he goes after like these gurus where, he was actually like harassed by people like creating fake websites and fake stories about him. I mean, it's part of what he's doing. I mean, most people I assume in this call are probably not doing like expose type of channels, but obviously it's in that niche. So it's obviously not a nice thing, but it could be a thing. It could be something to consider with your content and what you're doing, and how much you yourself may feel like you're willing to take when it comes to criticism, or if it comes to somebody maybe going out of their way to try and make something like messy or really or harass you. I mean, it's an awful thing to think about, but it does happen. Yeah, hopefully that kind of answers that question.
Yeah, and so just to kind of wrap things up on my end, you mentioned it a couple of times, your vision. Sort of, where do you see this going? What is your ultimate vision?
Yeah, got to make sure this doesn't turn into a 30-minute talk. But essentially, there was a great video by someone that I also recommend. Like everyone, check out this channel. You may already have heard of it. Colin and Samir. They're great guys who talk a lot about the creator economy stuff. I think it would be a great supplement as well to whatever you do on the course. They came out with a video recently, which was called I think it was like the Disneyfication of Nelk Boys. And Nelk Boys are like another channel on YouTube that are, it's like, imagine if you gave like a bunch of frat boys like a ton of money. It's kind of what you can imagine their channel is. But essentially, what they talk about is how you, through YouTube, and what these channels have done through YouTube is create a sort of media network, or what Disney did, where with Disney, you've got the television productions, which are also lead into like an actual in-person experience at Disneyland, which leads to, you've got like music that Disney does. You've got the films that they do. You've got the merchandise that they create. They create like a whole network of things that is all based around this brand of Disney. For me, that is kind of where I want to go towards. So whilst I've got the main channel, which is all about creating this great content, and storytelling is at the core of a lot of what I do, it would be amazing to mix the world of, in the same way that almost like Nelk, right, mix these worlds of vlogging and prank videos to a very high quality and turn them together to mix documentary storytelling with sort of the world of like what we see now with the creator economy, and with almost like influencers is like as annoying as the word can be. So on like the main channel, you might have these great documentaries, but it also may be that we can fund bigger projects once I've built out more of a team and have more of a more of like a group with me, where we can fund projects that we can pitch to Netflix, HBO, or whatever it might be. I think that the core thing, the thing that excites me so much about YouTube, is the idea that you're seeing these channels aren't like an actor, right, making a channel, or someone in their bedroom talking to a camera. These are people that are building like actual bigger, like they are the corporate, they are like the media company, they are like the Disney, they are the CNBC, they are like the big media corporation, where you look at someone, for example, like even like someone like Logan Paul, right, who was like boxing Mayweather not too long ago, who has built like a sort of fitness branch from his brand Maverick. Like they're building like big media kind of empires from what they're doing. And that's kind of what I wanted to do. But obviously mixing in this idea of like documentary storytelling meets that world of the creator economy. Yeah, hopefully that, it sounds very rambly and like fleshing it out. So it's super hard to sort of boil down into a sentence, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm aiming at. Oprah is a great example as well. Yes, Sarah put that out. Yeah, it's a really good example.
Don't worry, that wasn't rambly at all. That was that summed it up pretty well. We've got loads of hands up. So have you got time to take some questions? Is that all right?
Of course. Cool. I can stay as long as you guys want.
Let's go with Maggie.
Maggie.
Yes, my question is about you and your journey. When you reflect upon that journey with YouTube content creation, James, how did that affect you? And two questions are there. One, who did you become as a result of this journey? And two, do you like who you became or becoming, and why?
Yeah, Dan, that's a really good question. Deep one, huh? Yeah, so this it was very interesting, considering the blow up kind of happened very, very early for me. And it has its curses and its blessings. So I remember particularly when things were going crazy. I'm not someone that ever posted a lot on social media. It's like I had like 3 posts on my Instagram and that was it. That's all I've ever done. And then all of a sudden to go from that to like 100,000 subscribers in about a month's time, to like thousands of followers on my Instagram and all these messages, it was definitely a lot. And I remember particularly, there's always like a sort of, I can look at back at it now and laugh, but there was these 4 days I remember very vividly, where I just like my heart was going really, I was getting heart palpitations like crazy, which is really funny, like to look back at it now. But at the time it was like I couldn't eat properly, I couldn't sleep properly. I remember doing like laps in the local park to like release energy because it was just, it was getting really crazy for me. And it's been a process since then of learning to adapt to that. So, one thing, for example, that I was so big on at the time was like, I was like big on, I got to reply to everyone, every fan, every person that messages me, I've got to respond to them. And I would go into my Instagram and I would literally, I'd send voice notes to everyone that was, you know, thanking me and with the compliments and whatnot. I would send voice notes and I would speak to them. And then what I ended up realizing the moment I posted a new story was like, everyone would respond to that. And I would like have to go back to those conversations. And I'd spend literally like, it'd be like a whole day's worth of like, yeah, it's like a cycle, right? And it gets bigger and bigger. And I'd spend like a whole day's worth of time just trying to like respond to comments. It's partly why like the next video that came after the blow up took so long, is because I was having to adjust and understand, like, Jesus Christ, like how the hell do I deal with all of this, like, I guess, stimulus that's just being thrown my way. Who have I become? I don't think I've like changed much as a person, other than just becoming a bit more maturing, understanding like what I want to do with the channel, like fleshing out my own thoughts on YouTube, my own thoughts on business and entrepreneurship. I think I'm very much in a process of still figuring out, I guess, like who is James, right? Like that's kind of a big thing that I'm it's interesting you asked the question, because it's literally a huge question I've been asking myself recently with a lot of the content on the channel, and you know, what is it that I'm going towards, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's interesting. I don't, YouTube has been amazing, and I think it's definitely made me it's put me in positions like speaking to, even doing something like this, which is like it's really crazy doing this. Like I'm actually super nervous like doing things like this, but it's also led into speaking to other YouTubers that I used to watch. And I even had, there's this like story that I sometimes tell people because it's like a nice little flex for me, but like there was this one crazy time where I hopped on a call and like Mr. Beast was on the call, which is like one of the fastest growing channels, one of the biggest channels, and he like spent like a long time kind of going through my channel and a bunch of other people's on the calls channels and like breaking down their stuff, which was an insane experience. But it's been great, and it's really kind of, I'm in a process still of maturing and learning kind of what I'm doing and who I'm about and what is James Jani. But overall, it's been awesome. I think, yeah, no regrets. I think there's only like the slight curse of blowing up so soon that you're forced to be in this position really quickly and have to, you know, think of how you want to deal with things like people, you know, messaging you, etc. And someone just said lockdown was on your side, which is really funny, because it's like, as I'm sitting there, right, with all of this crazy stuff happening, this has all been inside of lockdown. Like the channel blew up inside of lockdown. I never got to really see my friends properly in person or like have a proper celebration and whatnot. And so that has been a very interesting experience for me. But yeah, overall, all been good. It's just been, yeah, it's still a process of kind of figuring out who I am and what I'm doing and the content that I'm making. But yeah, thank you for your question, Maggie.
Question of yourself and evolution of you. So thank you so much for that.
No problem at all.
Luli.
Hi, yeah. So you said that you took these ideas around self-help that you were struggling with and then made it more kind of general. And Ali often talks about like inserting personal stories, and he says like how I did something instead of how to do something. So I'm kind of curious about the difference and like when it's more effective and when it's less effective. For
sure, yeah. I think for me, if you just bring in the context that those videos were, like, I think literally the Talks About Self-Help was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 video on the channel, and I was getting hundreds of views at this time. Like for context, so I didn't explain this before, my channel was getting hundreds of views up until the 7th video, and then a month after the 7th video suddenly blew up inside of a month to 100,000 subscribers. So anyway, no one really knew who I was, is kind of the point. And so there was an issue when I was kind of brainstorming titles for the Talks About Self-Help, for example, where it's like, if we assess the titles of my experience with self-help or why I don't like self-help, they're not as interesting, because nobody really knows who I am. And you're in this process at the start of a YouTube channel of trying to get discovered, or trying, you know, for that algorithm to kind of land you that video that blows up and changes the channel, right? And so what would be better is, instead, if we broaden this out to somebody who doesn't need to know who I am to find the title interesting. So the toxic world of self-help is like an all-encompassing thing, right? It's like, dude, if I was like scrolling on YouTube and I was very much into self-help, and I see the toxic world of self-help versus why I don't read self-help anymore, it's like such a huge difference, right? I'd watch why I don't read self-help from Ali Abdaal, because I know Ali Abdaal, but with James Jani at 100 views, who cares, right? So yeah, it's a really important thing, but it's just I think the difference between, like, in Ali's situation and my situation is just the context. Like, Ali, I think he can do really well with his, like, what I did in this day or whatever, because people do know who he is, versus me. And this can change with video, right? Like, sometimes putting in I in a title when you are at the start can still be huge. It just is about what it's specifically the audience that you get from it. For example, doing a challenge where it's like, I quit sugar for 30 days, right? Which is, I know it's like Matt Diavella's one of his like most popular videos. Why I quit sugar for 30 days is still interesting, because you as an audience who doesn't know who this guy is can still relate and think, oh damn, like what is that like? What is quitting sugar like? Versus why I don't read self-help is very specific to who I am. If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I also wondered whether it's for new YouTubers, if they use personal stories, then they're automatically including story, and you don't necessarily think to include story, and so maybe it was that reason as well.
Yes, yeah. I think I think it's great to include stories of it. Like, personal stories are great because it's easy also content for you to be able to like create, because you're talking about your own experience. But when you do those moment, like, and have those personal stories, package it well. Like, package it to a broader sort of audience and a scope. Obviously, don't get too crazy clickbait where it's literally irrelevant to the entire video. But just understanding how you package that video is a super important thing. If you are going to tell a personal story, or if you're just at the start of your channel. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
No problem.
Cool. Ahmed.
Hey, so I've seen a few of your videos, love your videos, especially the Fake Guru one. I know we're speaking quite a lot about editing here, but a lot of the people on this cohort, I think they're going to end up, and me as well, by the way, I think we're going to end up making more so the talking head type of videos as opposed to the documentary style. Do you have any tips on editing and how we can sort of, have that extra edge, or, more of an appeal with editing, but based on a talking head style rather than a documentary style? And just the second part of that question was, you mentioned storytelling. Now, obviously, storytelling on YouTube is very different to storytelling with movies and TV to some degree.
Some degree. Yeah.
Do you have any tips on how we can storytell better on the digital medium? Especially if it's much shorter, like 10 minutes, 8 minutes, around that sort of mark. That would be amazing.
Yeah, amazing questions, Ahmed. Okay, talking head videos. Yeah. So here's what I would do, and it's essentially what I did with my channel as well. Find every channel that you possibly can that is within your. I recommend actually doing this. There's a really good activity. I know Daryl Eves sometimes talks about it, who's like a YouTube consultant guy, but create a fresh channel, a completely fresh channel. Not to upload or anything, just start a fresh channel and start searching for people that are inside of the niche that you're planning on entering, right? So if you're in the case of like Ali Abdaal, you might start searching productivity or study tips, right? And go and click on those channels and start to just notice what channels are getting recommended, which ones are coming up, right? Because YouTube is, the algorithm is very, very clever. They'll throw you into these rabbit holes because they know if you're searching for this video, they'll understand what kind of content you're into. And very much you'll start to basically find a bubble of people that are inside your niche. In every single one of them, highlight some of the key videos, some of the key channels. In all of them, start to create what I guess sometimes I call this, because I learned this from MJ DeMarco, like the author, find the value points. So what are the things that make them stand out? Is it the editing? Is it and when it goes into the editing, be specific with that. So like, what kind of editing do they do? Is it really quick and snappy? Is it really like slow edits? Is it really, is it almost vloggy kind of edits? So there's one thing, editing. What about the personality? How much of the personality do they show? Is there anything really unique about the personality and what they're doing? Find all of these different value points And what you can do is zoom out for a second once you've done this activity and you've found like some of the main, like big channels in that niche. Zoom out for this and start to look at first, what are your unfair advantages, right? So what are the things that you've got experience in, or that you are good at? For example, in my case, I came from an acting creative background, right? And in the finance niche, like none of that was being really utilized apart from that channel of Jake Tran, which was just a slow proof of concept for me that it could be a thing. Start looking at that and whether you could bring elements of what you're good at and what you have experience in into that niche, into those value, and like which of these value points you can skew in your favor. So like for example, with me, if someone was to go and assess my channel on just the finance basis, information wise, I don't think they would skew my value up. But when it comes to entertainment and storytelling versus like a Graham Stephan, it's like way skewed up, and it's like your USP, right? So your unique selling point is what is going to make you stand out. That's one thing. The second thing you can do, having these value points, is look at what other channels have done and are like, and how could you potentially bring that into your niche? The same thing could be said literally for the channel. I did this like documentary kind of style, but there were many channels which do this sort of Netflix kind of documentary editing style. Like Lamino is a great example that comes to mind, right? Who did a lot of like mystery videos and about like mostly like internet mysteries type of stuff. But he has this great editing. Well, what if you could bring that into like into the finance niche, which is what I did? Or if you're, I mean, I'm just brainstorming ideas even now off the cuff. So like with talking head videos, I don't know whether it's like a commentary channel or whether it maybe you're like doing productivity as well. What if you could mix like a David Dobrik type of vlog where it's like 5 minutes, but it's super quick cuts and it gets you like, it's almost like a string of individual videos strung together, like kind of like a David Dobrik does, but inside of that niche. Potentially could be something to experiment with. Like, I mean, even like, yeah, I mentioned the Note Boys as well. I mean, these are quite like big channels, but yeah, I don't know if that, does that kind of help? Does that give you a sense of sort of a good activity that you can do to really find ways in which that's to answer your first bit?
Yeah, no, it definitely helps, especially this point you're making about not necessarily looking in just your niche, but other niches and seeing how can you take ideas from there. So I know someone mentioned Vox, and your editing style is kind of like Vox, a bit different, but it's kind of like Vox.
For sure.
So no, that first part definitely helps for sure. So going broader rather than just looking at the people within your current niche.
Start looking at your niche, because you obviously have to understand a kind of feel for it. But then once you've got that, and maybe something isn't particularly striking out to you that you can change, then you can go broad and start to look at like other like niches, and can you bring an element of that into your niche? Then your second thing, which was on storytelling on YouTube, for like, was it
correct?
Were you saying like that it's a struggle of like knowing how to tell a story inside of 8 minutes, or just knowing how to tell a story inside of like a talking head video?
Essentially what I was saying was, well, in a movie you have like a narrative arc and a character arc and so on and so on, but on YouTube you don't necessarily have those exact elements. Well, you don't necessarily have a character arc. So I was just kind of interested in your thoughts on storytelling on YouTube in a much smaller medium as a whole.
Yeah. Okay, got you. The best thing to do is to fit things into character. Also, Untold Truth About Money, right? That video of mine was a video that was literally about how you've got these people who build wealth in a short amount of time, typically tend to do it through creating a business that scales, and they end up liquidating it, right? That was all the video was. But the story was this. The character in that story was the audience. And the story was about taking them down this journey where first they're introduced to this idea of these rich people, like, how the hell do I go and get what they want? Like, there's no way I get that. They got lucky. They got this, they got that. It's never going to be like that. I'm going to stay in debt, etc., right? That was where we started off. Like, that's the beginning of our journey. But then suddenly we're introduced to this idea of like, oh, hey, but like, what if there was kind of an equation or a way of breaking this down from what these people have done that I could potentially follow? Okay, there's like an element of mystery, or the call to action is sometimes, I guess, what they call it in theoretical like storytelling. There's your call to action, the call to adventure, sorry, is the right word. There's the call to adventure, which is, oh damn, what is this thing that I can do? And now you go into this journey of, okay, like I'm trying to remember what how the structure of that was. Oh, like, let's look at like your previous held beliefs, and let's actually deconstruct them and look at whether are they right, are they correct, are they not, and then you continue down that journey. This is from a video that's literally just about people who've made a lot of money from selling their businesses. But you form the story by finding the characters, by finding what the narrative is in there. I promise you, with any video, you can do this. Even with like the most dude, even with an Ali Abdal video, I guarantee if you can just go, and I'm sure Ali, like, and I know actually Ali does like consciously look at like the story elements of his videos. You can find like the story inside of that. It doesn't necessarily have to be like you're creating a movie, but the simple like storytelling principles of, you know, you've got the hook, you've got the conflict, you've got the resolution. Like these are things that you can absolutely apply into a video. In fact, I would say one of the most critical things to me, like doing well on YouTube, was just storytelling. And I think it's so important. Like, do not think that just because you're inside of a niche that maybe isn't so, oh, I'm making a documentary or I'm making like an actual story, that you shouldn't apply any of these principles or actually just fit what you're doing into those like themes of like creating characters, whether the character is the audience, whether the character is you. Yeah, does that help?
It does, especially the part where you mentioned that you're sort of using the audience as the character and they're sort of going through this journey. I think that does differentiate YouTube and social media from movies to some degree. So no, that definitely does help for sure. Awesome. Thank you so much.
No problem at all, man.
Cool. We had a little question in the chat there while that was going on. That was, sorry, let me just find it. If you were editing an Ali Abdal video, what would you do differently?
What a question. Jesus. What would I do differently with Ali Abdal video? Maybe it's a cop-out answer, but I don't think there's much I would change. Like editing is like being like it's like asking, I don't know, like Adele, what would she do differently with an ASAP Rocky song? Like these are two very different kind of like niches and people and styles. Like with Ali, right? Ali's got a very clear theme and style guide with what he does, like that, and it's very clean and it's very neat. Like I don't know. Like, I don't know what I'd literally have to sit down with Ali, ask like, okay, what do you want this video to be? And then kind of form, I can only apply my style to Ali's editing. I don't think there's, okay, let me try and be harsh. Let me try and grill you, Ali. Maybe there's elements that you could cut down, or things that aren't actually essential to the quote unquote story or the information that you're trying to portray, that could be just like cut out. But I think, see, this is very specific to videos as well. Like I'd actually have to like sit and look at a video. Yeah, cop out answer, guys. I do apologize, but there's just nothing I can really think of off the cuff other than the fact that we're just complete different styles.
Fair enough. I think we'll have to get you sat down with Ali at one point.
Yeah, hell yeah. It would be good, yeah.
Mind you, you haven't gone after the productivity guru niche yet, so that might be one of your next.
Yeah, I'm comfort Ali. Hell yeah.
Right, Daryl.
Hiya. Thank you so much for this. Like, this is just completely blowing my mind. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. No problem at all.
So you sort of talked about how you identified a possible niche area by looking at some of these other influences and your unfair advantages. But would you say that you picked it based on that this was the best opportunity, or did you like have a burning passion for it? And a kind of second part to that is, was there another route that you were potentially going to go down that you maybe fleshed out a bit more?
Yeah. With that first question, just so I answer it properly. So you saying, did you pick it based on, was it just a purely a business move of like, hey, no one's doing this, I'm going to do it, versus how much of that was passion, right?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Daryl. Okay, yes, great question. It's a mix of the two, and there's a very tight, I'm in a position now where it's becoming a case of now I can consider more about like my own passions and creativity. But at the start, it's a case of being I was very interested in finance as it was, and sort of the entrepreneurship niche, and I was already very involved with these kind of YouTubers and the sort of subjects that I touched on. And what I realize now, having done the videos, is that a lot of my passion, the passion side of this, comes from the creativity, from the storytelling, from the crazy edits. That's like where the passion comes in. And so it was, I do not recommend anyone go in purely business minded where they have no actual passion for what they're doing, because it just isn't going to work. You're going to burn out very quickly. You're not going to enjoy making content. It's a very easy recipe to just like have a channel that you just end up like leaving in the graveyard, basically. But it still has to be a mix. It still has to be an understanding of of understanding like what is it that you're passionate about, what is it that maybe it's something that you're not like if I like the finance niche is definitely, and this is why I'm saying I'm moving out of it just very slightly, because the finance niche, whilst I'm very like interested in it and have made videos on it, etc., it's maybe not something that I enjoy necessarily making content on its own. Like it's not like, I mean, you know, catch me outside of like a video and we can like, I love talking about finance, etc., but maybe not like necessarily when it comes to making content on it. And so, but I still had to be like, okay, I'm inside of that world and I understand that world. Now let's mix in what I'm passionate about. And I mixed in those passions. It's worked out well. And now I'm in a position where I can begin to look at, okay, I've established an audience, and now how do I begin to pivot away from it? So in reality, I can't, and I don't know what that's going to look like. Maybe it turns out I start pivoting and the channel goes to like hell and I have to go back, right? So like, I don't know what ends up happening there, but I think that, yeah, it's a mix of both. It's a mix of both. If you're passionate about both things, brilliant. If not, like
A difficult second album.
it's literally that. Like it's a tough one. It's a super, super tough one. And then your second question, which was was there another route you asked, right?
Yeah, was there something else that you attempted to do?
Not on the side of YouTube. Now, like having been in the game, like there's probably like 4 different channel ideas that I maybe if I went back I would have maybe executed on, right? Like but not at the time of starting the channel. I think for me it was very much, oh, this just makes sense, and this is like finance, mix it in with the documentary stuff. Like 2 videos in, that was my idea of doing that mix, and then let's go for it. There wasn't any other different route that I think, like looking back at it, yeah, no, there's no other route. I think I was just very involved with that community and that fan base, and I knew that mixing in that documentary style with that community that I was already aware of was the only route, right? Like really that I could have gone down.
Thank you. That was amazing. That's exciting.
Of course. Pleasure, man. Take care.
Cool. We've got 5 more hands. Let's take 5 more questions. Natalie, you mentioned your question piggybacks on the back of the last one. So let's go with you.
Hi, James. Thanks
Hello.
so much for all of this. So my question is similarly related to that. It seems like you do a really excellent job of demystifying topics. And I was just curious if it seems like that's also part of your natural storyteller, affinity. Do you think that lends itself to your success, like the demystification quality that you bring to your videos? Because there's embedded mystery and intrigue and curiosity, and just because like finance, that topic, not everyone's interested in that, but you make it interesting. So I just wanted to, ask, like, is that intentional, and are there like tips for us to use to help, bring demystification into what we do?
Sure. Yeah. Good. Yeah, it's a great question. I think for sure, like the element of demystifying something or finding the truth of something has obviously been helpful when it comes to creating content that is like naturally you can find a story in there, right? Like finding the truth in and of itself is a narrative. So when your kind of niche or I guess brand is about that idea, then it can make that process easier. And I absolutely think it's helped with the success of the channel when it comes to like some of the biggest videos. I think it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to bring in, if we kind of boil it down, right? What is like finding the truth, or what is demystifying something? At the end of the day, it's about like creating something that is engaging to watch. And in that case, my way of finding something engaging was through finding the truth. And it is something that you asked whether it was intentional, and I think it was more of like a subconscious like intentionality, because I've always been someone, especially around this period of time where I was starting the channel, where I was trying to search for like the truth in certain subjects. It just naturally matched with what I wanted to do. But I think at the core of it, it's about like, it's literally just content that is engaging, right? So in the same way that demystifying something can be inherently engaging, it can also be engaging to watch somebody unbox or talk about, let's say, like Windows 11 or give their thoughts on it. It's not necessarily, you can bring those elements that I don't know if this is making sense, maybe this is getting too rambly, but it's like you bring the elements of what makes something engaging into the niche, versus like it's not just the fact that it was demystifying something that is inherently like the thing that makes it engaging. Does that make any sense at all? Cool. And then did you have a second question, or was that?
Well, I mean, it was just like I like your approach in demystifying because you know it keeps us like on the grip of watching the topic.
Yeah.
So I just didn't know if that was sort of like a hack for keeping your viewers like really engaged, like those super fans. That's it.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, no, on that question, yeah, it's yeah, by the nature of demystifying something would make it engaging, and I do believe that is the case. And if it's possible to bring that into your niche, whatever it might be, definitely, like I of course would say like finding ways in which you can present a question and demystify it, or present a topic or preconceived notion, and finding a way of deconstructing it or demystifying something is, yeah, would definitely make it engaging. Sure. Thank you, Natalie.
Cool. Taz, let's go with you next.
Hey James, how you doing?
Hey Taz.
Funny story. I remember the first time I saw you. Because I saw one of your videos the day, but I hadn't clocked. The first time I'd seen your face, my brother sent me your fake guru video, and we were in tears over it. And I literally, when I saw that who was coming on to it, I was like, that's crazy. I didn't make the connection. But what I wanted to ask, because you said you started around a year and a half ago, with the editing. So I've kind of started on Premiere Pro, and a similar sort of thing. And I'm looking at it. I know you recommended like the Udemy path, but how long did it take you? Because obviously you've got to like Jedi master level of editing. How long did it take you to transition from an absolute novice and then to using After Effects and Premiere Pro? And just without overloading the question too much, was it simply just watching Udemy courses on After Effects and Premiere Pro and then just honing the craft by constantly making videos?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Thank you, Taz. So the process of editing was very much like what you just said. So I first began with, so I started with that Udemy course, and then I watched like a Skillshare course as well later on the basics of Premiere Pro, and that was it. So I've never taken an After Effects course, for example, or at least not fully all the way, apart from like I did take a typography one recently. But essentially what it was is every single video on the channel, there was something new that I kind of picked up along the way, and you may even see this. So if like the learning thing is literally like this, right? So it's like a classic thing of learning any skill where your learning curve would like typically look something like this, where it's you start off like this, it's slower, and then you make progress, and then you have this like pivotal point where I think a lot of things begin to click. For me, that was with like the Tyler one video. If you look at that editing versus the stuff that came before it, that video was mostly animations. The things before it were movie clips. And so essentially the process of learning how to edit was a case of I'm doing a video, I'm editing. There's an effect here that I have in my mind that I want to create, and I have no idea how to do this. Okay, I don't know how to do this. Let me go onto YouTube. Let me search a tutorial, because sometimes you wouldn't have been taught some of this stuff inside of a course, right? Especially one that's just trying to give you the basics. So I go into YouTube, I try and search a tutorial on how to mimic that effect. And then after seeing that tutorial, I may or may not be able to actually mimic the effect in my video, but hands down, guaranteed, especially if you're starting out, there is something in every tutorial that you watch that you're going to be able to take away and be like, oh crap, I didn't know there was a tool for that. Or I didn't know that was a thing. Now imagine you repeat this process like hours on end and weeks on end, and you're constantly going and making a video, doing the video, going, oh, there's an effect here I want to create. I don't know how to do it. Going and watching a tutorial, going back, learning that there's new techniques and new stuff, repeat. And at some point you hit like a very critical point where like your ability to suddenly really especially with After Effects, I got this when it was like that Tyler one video, it was like, I suddenly really understood well, like, okay, oh damn, like this is how it works. Like this is how I can go and create like an animation. We have like the sort of background here, and then we can motion tile it and create the thing. And like all of these little things that you learn from all of these tutorials, like they come in, like it's a beautiful thing, man. It's an amazing thing. But it's literally a process of repeating. It's very important to like keep watching tutorials and keep learning like different things that people have. Don't because what and I guess sometimes I even ask myself, it's like what kind of made this process for me caused me to go into this crazy editing thing versus someone else on YouTube who stays on the same like level.
Yeah.
And it's just the case of like wanting to go and watch other tutorials or wanting to create other effects. And sometimes I think people love the editing of my channel, and sometimes I even think to myself, like, it's not even anything crazy once you kind of understand the sort of back end stuff about After Effects and Premiere Pro. What is most important is your ability to kind of visualize the thing that you want to create, and actually the actual creativity side of it. And that comes with like watching documentaries and watching films and paying attention to like other YouTubers' edits and stuff, and noting down. Dude, like my phone literally looks like it's not even filled with like people, and it's just filled with editing examples of like editing stuff that I like, and just creating a collage of edits, and yeah, repeating that process along with trying to recreate the effects, along with the tutorials, along with learning all these different tools. Like there is no way that you cannot like your ability to create better edits like will get exponentially better.
That's super helpful. Thank you.
No problem at all.
Could I just ask as well, when you do the videos, because she said if let's say you've got a question and it's taking longer than 10 seconds, you'll ditch it. And I imagine obviously you've got a timeline that you're working to. But do you, let's say you're doing the law of attraction video, you're doing the 2 parts. I haven't seen the second part, I watched the first part.
Yeah.
So do you consider there's a risk that you run sometimes in the videos that you're going to create by not potentially missing a question or doing a deeper dive? Not saying that you don't do a deep dive, but because you're sticking to this timeline, do you ever worry that you're going to miss an important piece of information that is going to come back and bite you down the line?
Yeah, all the time. It's like a really common thing. It's not just with me, it's with like a lot of channels, even ones that aren't like about, you know, doing deep dives in the first place. Yeah, absolutely. It's something that comes up. Like there's still stuff that in a lot of these videos that I wish I could have said or made nuanced points about that I wasn't able to because of a time frame. Because yeah, it in many ways it's kind of the nature of the game, in knowing what information to keep and what information to leave. It can definitely be tough. That's for sure. And sometimes you put yourself in a tough spot when you pick a very broad subject as well. So like the MLM video, for example, that I did, very broad. Like there's so much you can talk about with multi-level marketing companies. So in trying to do that, encapsulate all of that world inside of one video means I'm gonna have to get rid of some information here. Like I can't go too much into why they legally are allowed to exist as much as I'd like to, or like any of this stuff. It's literally the nature of the game. Yeah,
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Good, man. No problem at all.
Cool. Last few questions, Pete.
Hi, James. Yeah, thanks. Just a couple of probably different questions to everyone else so far. Quick question: Patreon versus YouTube membership. Did you have to decide between the two, or was YouTube membership not available at the time?
Yeah, I started Patreon before the YouTube. I literally started Patreon before I even had like 1,000 subscribers, I think. The reason I made that split is like my main goal is to like diversify from YouTube and relying on ad revenue and just Google really. And so that's like literally the main thing was like, okay, if I do like a channel membership, it's going to be again coming from YouTube. Not like you should do, like it really is depending on where you're at and what you want to do. But yeah, that was the main decision. It was just like, do you get
to see email addresses off of the Patreon? Like, can you add them to your email list or anything?
You don't, unfortunately, which obviously if you had an email list, that would be a great thing. Like you do get emails, sorry. I will say you do. Wait, do you? Actually, that's a really good question. I think you get the emails. Yeah, I didn't even think about this. I think you do. Obviously, maybe there's a bit of an ethical thing because I don't know if you can, unless you actually specifically say you're going to, yes, you do get emails. I guess you probably want to specify on your Patreon that once you're a patron, you're subscribed to this. Maybe you have a special Patreon newsletter.
Yeah. Well, it's a benefit. You get the newsletter or something.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Actually, yeah, I know actually a couple of people that do that as well on Patreon. So yeah, you get the emails as well. The only thing is Patreon does take their cut. Then again, they're hosting the entire thing, so it makes sense.
Yeah, the frustrating thing with YouTube is you don't even know when they've joined. You get no notification from YouTube that someone has signed up.
Really? What? You're kidding?
It's a little bit annoying to me. I
didn't even know this.
Every month, I'm like, you've got 5 members. Like, have I?
Wow. Okay. Damn. Well, that's not nice. Patreon gives you a nice little notification when you get a little, someone joins a tier.
Yeah, I think I might switch mine over.
Yeah. Well, you'll give it a go. Give it a go. Yeah.
Another quick second question. You mentioned you've got an assistant. Just wondering if I can ask kind of, if I can be cheeky and ask how much you pay them, but what do they do for you? I'm just trying to get ideas. I'm trying to offload stuff, and I think I've offloaded as much as I can do. But yeah, it'd be great to get some ideas.
Yeah, for sure. I might not say pay just because I know that they're actually part of the PTYA thing as well. They might watch this back. But But so in terms of what they do, because the assistant role was like very much here and there, what it is, and I remember Ali recommended me a banging book on about like how to hire an assistant properly. I think it was called World Class Assistant. Yeah, it was like your World Class Assistant. But the goal is look at all the tasks that you do in a day, and look specifically at the ones that are like, dude, I don't need to do this. Like someone else can do this. Like whether it's emails, whether it's just like doing some preliminary research on a subject. Maybe it's literally like gathering the questions from a Patreon Q&A and putting them into a folder or screenshotting them. Whether it's like it varies. Like I have my assistants, sometimes they go about like doing some of the research for the videos. I'll find like a couple sources. Can you go and like just bullet point some notes from this? Sometimes it's finding B-roll for certain things. So I'll have like a storyboard up and I'll be like, could we get some B-roll for this? Could you go and find like some B-roll for this? To the point where it could even be like oh, could you buy this from Amazon type? Like it's like it literally like varies on this broad scope of things that essentially distract you from doing the main things that you are good at and want to do inside of the business. That's with the assistant. Obviously, a video editor.
Do you chat to them much? Because I've got a VA and I set her the task and I basically don't hear from her for a whole month because she's just cracking on with the task. But then I'm feeling a bit detached.
Yeah, it definitely depends on I guess how you want that, how you want to work with them. Like in this case, I want my assistant to be very closely knit with the group and the business. So what I do and what I do with the editor as well is we have like every week we sort of do a monthly Monday strategy call where we kind of all hop on a call. We talk about what we're going to get done for the week and how the last week went, etc., etc. And then at some point during the week, typically on a Friday, I will have a one-to-one session with both my assistant and an editor, which is just like a chance for us to catch up on how they got along, anything they're struggling with, and getting to know them better is really, but it depends. Like sometimes you just need a VA to just do some email stuff and you don't really need them to be as heavily involved. It's completely up to you.
And I guess then very last quick question.
Yeah,
if they're part of PTYA, are they kind of have their own YouTube channel as well? So they're kind of very much in the YouTube like system?
Yeah, what do you mean? Sorry, wait, say the question again.
So in terms of your assistant, do they have their own YouTube channel, or are they kind of?
Oh no, they're in it for they're in it for fun. They're a fan of Ali Abdal actually.
Cool. Okay,
so, yeah, I was just like looking at Ali. They're a fan of Ali, and technically they've got my account of PCYA, so it's not like they're in the course. It's like my own account there,
yeah.
But yeah, that's that.
Cool. I appreciate that. Thank you.
No worries. Take care, Pete.
Nice, James, mate. Just want to say huge thank you. Why do I hear myself? Because Angus is just sitting across from me.
Yeah. Nice. There we go.
Wait. There's still feedback. Angus,
a little bit. No, you're good.
Okay, there we go. That's better. Yeah, thank you so much. This has been fantastic. I've been taking notes, and I'm we're in the process of potentially hiring a motion graphics designer for our channel. Nice. And when that question was asked, I was like, what would you do differently on my channel? I was like, oh yes, I was ready to write stuff down. And so part of the homework that I need to do is trawl through all of your videos and screenshot every single bit of like sick editing. And we're like, okay, guys, we need to start doing this motion graphic stuff. But yeah, thank you so much. That was incredibly insightful and amazing. We still have 2 hands, so if you do have a few more minutes, it would be lovely to get those two hands answered.
Let's go.
But yeah, I just wanted to say thanks. So who do we have next?
Ali.
Hi James. I'm a big fan of your channel. I just have 2 quick fire fast questions. Basically, the first one is your videos are quite like long and they're proper projects, right? You work on them for like a month or something, you research and stuff like that. I'm personally quite intrigued to doing videos like that. I know that goes completely against what Ali says, that hey, shoot 1 video a week, even if it's garbage or whatever, you just upload it. And one of my reasons is because when I go to make a video and maybe I have an idea, and then through the process of making that video and trying to, for example, teach it to someone else, I actually learn quite a lot myself. So I was wondering, like, how much do you learn from each of your projects? And would you recommend someone, for example, like me, to do this, to go properly research one topic and then make a video about it?
Yeah, great question, Ali. Yeah, so it's so true. Yeah, you do like the Bitcoin series, for example. I came into that not knowing anything about Bitcoin, like other than some broad strokes. So when I kind of went and actually started diving into the project and learning about it, Amazing. Like I learned so much from doing that. And it was really interesting as well. I was super curious about it. And I found it a very fun experience. Sometimes there's subjects where like you have to learn about it and it's not as interesting. I remember the data broker video I was stressing about, and that was like right at the start of the channel where I was like giving myself a strict 1 week, 2 week like rule to get a video done. And I just wasn't that interested in the subject, but it was like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get it done, and I'm going to post it. I think what your question brought up, and maybe this is a bad thing, but your question brought up something that I didn't get to talk about, which is there are cons to doing the strategy that I do. And like with Ali's strategy as well, this is what I would recommend for any starting channel. And let me emphasize that this is what I did at the start as well, is like be a bit more consistent and go with, you don't necessarily have to be once a week if you don't want to be that strict on yourself. Like maybe you need to spend a little bit longer. But I would be strict on yourself and give yourself consistency at the start, because you're in a process of needing to be discovered. You're in a process of finding out what it is that you do, what kind of content you do actually enjoy making. The only way to understand that is to be like uploading consistency, and sacrifice a bit of like the quality or the bigger projects that you may want to work on. And so one of the cons, for example, in what I do now, is that there is still an element on YouTube where you do have to be consistent. And like one of the things that I suffer from is my production scaled rapidly, very quickly. It started from like using movie clips to then learning a bit of motion graphics to then diving into just complete animations. And it scaled really quickly to the point where it became like sometimes there was an upload after 3 months. I don't recommend that. I don't recommend somebody having an upload after 3 months. Unless you want to stay like stagnated at a certain level, sure, that's fine. And that may be acceptable, like depending on what your goals are. But if you want to continue to grow and continue to build like a bigger thing here, like you do have some level of consistency that should be met on your end. And sometimes if you scale too fast, like I did with the production, you will suffer from that, which is now why I'm having to like hire an editor, and now I'm slowly getting better at that. But it's just a problem that in all honesty, if I just hadn't scaled and I just held back like that crazy creativity, right, and just held it back a bit, I think the channel could be 1 million. In fact, I'm very confident it could be 1 million plus. Not that it's like end of the world, right? But it's like I know that the growth could have been much quicker if I just held back that production, the scaling of it. Does that kind of help with your question?
Yeah, so it's basically like a trade-off, right? So you want to be somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, because I was hitting a point where it was like I was getting diminishing returns. And you just don't want to be in that position. You do want to give yourself consistency, but especially for the start, when you're starting on YouTube, it's about gathering data and understanding yourself as like a content creator. Like you have to be making content in order to really understand yourself. Yeah, good question.
Have you ever scrapped a video that was taking just too long, or couldn't be asked to do the rest?
It's good. It's a really good question. Almost. I haven't technically scrapped a video. I've scrapped ideas before, like I go into them. So like obviously there's like I have ideas lists and I'm just like, no, I'm never gonna do that one. But in terms of an idea that I've actually gone in and researched, I've never scrapped. I came so close to scrapping the escaping the rat race video, which was like a 2 million viewed video, which was like really interesting because obviously I thought that video was terrible when I'd done it. I was like, there's no way people are gonna like this. The scrapping videos is something you should consider later on in your journey, depending on where you're at. Like scrapping videos shouldn't be something you do at the start, because every video gives you a data point, both on the YouTube analytics end and for yourself, like a data point and understanding. Oh, I know why this video wasn't good, or I know why like I wanted to scrap this because I didn't really enjoy talking about these subjects or this topic. And that's why I wouldn't recommend it. Later on, when you're bigger and you've got a team, you can be much more stricter and be like, hey, I'm scrapping this. And that's fine because you're able to suddenly pivot to a new idea and whatnot. And it's easier. You got more data points, etc., etc. But yeah, definitely not something I'd recommend at the start. And I personally haven't scrapped any yet.
Awesome. Thanks.
No problem at all, man. Take care.
Last question is Adnan.
Sure.
Thanks.
Yes, Adnan.
Again, thank you, James. I saw your video yesterday for the first time. Really good on Bitcoin.
Amazing.
Question is, I think in the same vein as Taz and Ali's question, if I were to look at that 20% to give me that 80% return on like Pareto's principle in editing, so I can still understand how to tell the story and then I can outsource it the right way, what would you consider that 20% in retrospect?
Such a good question. Such a good question. Partly because I struggle with this as well, right? Like, I think editing is a symptom of storytelling. So when I wouldn't separate those two things, right? So it's just the storytelling. So what is the 20% that you can get inside of the storytelling to make the video engaging without needing to go all the crazy effort as well? It's hard because I can't really give you like a specific. I can't be like, oh, like only do these effects and then that's it, and they'll give you the key to it. I think it's just knowing. Ah, man, it's such a tough.
On the story where they said do homework for life and then understand where that 5-second rule is and then go backwards from that. I think it's helped me a lot on understanding how to even make the narrative or the hero's journey.
Yes.
These are all new concepts to me, right? So
yes.
like I'm looking at them now, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. I can understand how to do that. Or on ultra speaking, I'm practicing every single day speaking in rapid fashion, just so I can get more comfortable with as practice. That 20% there.
Yes. Yeah.
What do you think it's in editing, or even resources or practice that we can use? And by the way, I'm looking at your Patreon. I'm trying to sign up, and it says they'll do it for the month. Is that the way Patreon works? Like,
yeah, typically it's like a monthly thing. So you pay for the month, and then after you can cancel at any time.
Do it on July, so I think I have to wait until the July starts.
Oh no, I don't think you do. I think you can just jump in, and then they'll charge you at July. I think. I'm not too sure actually. I've never done it, but I really appreciate you even wanting to sign up. Okay, so what is that? What does that look like for editing? Okay, I've got a resource for you, a really good channel to look up. Guy called Hayden. Hold on, let me just actually double check what the channel name is.
Hayden Miller.
It's not. No, it's not Hayden.
Hayden Hillier-Smith.
That's the one. Yeah, Hayden Hillier-Smith. So he's the editor for Logan Paul, but he makes amazing videos about video editing. But what's interesting is he's not like talking about going crazy with your animation. He's very emphasizes the story and just like narrowing down on the storytelling aspects of things and just showing you how even making the right cut in the right place or right sound effect here and there can basically completely make like something look better and feel better. In terms of what you can do with your editing, just as a consistent.
Told me about him today.
What's the, oh, the second person to check out that channel. Yeah. He's a really good. He's very, very talented, extremely talented guy. So yeah, have a look at his stuff. This is a tough question for me because it's something that even I struggle with. So I guess I can't give you a proper answer that's honest to what I know and what I do. But hopefully Hayden might be more of a help than me. Awesome. Thank you, Adnan.
Right, that brings us almost to the end. Thank you, James, for giving up so much time. Very much appreciated. I think everyone's appreciated the value that you provided. So yeah, thanks very much. And this will obviously be uploaded to the P2IA community in the next couple of hours. Is there anywhere apart from the Patreon, obviously, that you can want to plug or anything like that, James, at the end of this session?
Yeah, so Patreon is the YouTube channel, obviously, and if you guys want to follow me on Instagram or Twitter, my Instagram handle is drumroll james.v.j. That is so annoying, man. I wish I had like a consistent handle across all my platforms, but it got taken on Twitter. So Instagram james.v.j and Twitter just at jamesv.jani. And that is all. Thank you guys for bringing me on. It was a pleasure. I hope some of this advice can help you all in your journeys on YouTube. Yeah, and I wish you all the best.
Cool. Awesome. Cheers, everyone. Thanks, James.
No worries. Take care.